You're Paul. I'm the new Sprintern.
Sprint plus...
Intern. Yeah, clever, right? Looking at getting an amazing iPhone 8?
Yeah, because...
Now you can lease one iPhone 8, get the other one on Sprint to give your second phone to your new friend.
And you get the best price for unlimited.
And now lease one iPhone 8 and get a second one on us. Visit your local Sprint store, sprint.com/iPhone, or call 1-800-SPRINT1 today.
iPhone 8 64 gigabyte $29.17 a month. Second iPhone 8 after $29.17 a month. Credit applied within 2 bills. Requires 2 new lines or 1 new and 1 upgrade with 18-month leases. Early termination results in full balance due. Excludes tax subject to credit and 30 activation restrictions apply.
Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot. Oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here's your host, paranormal researcher Patricia Baker, on the one, the only Supernatural Girls.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker. I am here with my co-host all the way from Tucson, Patricia Kirkman. PK, how you doing tonight?
Fabulously wonderful, absolutely charming with this 90-some degree weather. 100.
You're very warm over there.
I got to admit, it's hot stuff going on over here.
It's hot stuff. You are hot stuff. So I just want to mention, everybody, PK is a numerologist, and if you need your numbers done, this is the lady to see. Go to patriciakirkman.com, and you can set up an appointment with Patricia when it's convenient for the two of you, and I'm sure you'll be very enlightened by what she has to say. Because we have a lot going on in the world, and unfortunately, it's not pleasant. So we're going to start with where we are as a collective with the numbers, and then you also took a look at the perpetrators' numbers. So we're going to also talk a little bit about that tonight before we go to our paranormal segment. And we also have a tremendous guest tonight. We have Deborah Castellano, who has written this really great book. We enjoyed it. Wasn't it a fun book? This is a fun book.
I think we need to show people that you can go find it. It's a good book.
Glamour magic. I love it. I love it. It's a great book. We're going to go through all this stuff. Mm-hmm. It's a fun book. It's enlightening, and there's lots and lots of rituals that we can all participate in to get what we want. We're going to be talking about all this with Deborah tonight.
And non-threatening on top of it. Non-threatening. You could do all these things and make yourself feel good.
I'm all for it. And we are glamorous ladies. We're all set and ready to go.
Yes.
So let's get to the numbers. What in the world is going on?
Well, firstly, we have to accept the fact that this month is a preview of next year. It's all about our sensitive side. It's about relationships, females, partnerships of all sorts, being the peacemaker, the arbitrator, helping others along their way. That's what this coming year is all about. But we're in a bridge between where we've been and where we're going, which deals with all kinds of scattered communications. And people are a little nervous and jerky about what's taking place, especially after what just took place in Vegas.
Yes.
So that
we're all on
being
edge.
Said, yes, because you don't know what to expect anymore from any place. And unfortunately, I'm afraid that the numbers are going to climb before this is over with. The individual, Stephen Paddock, I hope that God has a place for him, but I'm going to stop. I'll let it stop right there. But he has been in a 5-year. His nerves have been on overload. He's been kind of bouncing around in so many different directions, but he started to go into a period where it was about being perfected. But the day that he chose to do this was a day going on with deceit, deception, sneak attacks, things that were the norm. He is a perfectionist in his own way, but yet a very imbalanced individual, because everything in his chart dealt with the need to be a partner. And he's been married twice. He's in this other relationship. And I think the lack of being in a partnership that could be a balance was something that preyed on him quite a bit. But he was like bouncing around, not knowing where he fits. But his ability to do the things that he did are absolutely mind-boggling. And I really am interested in finding out more about his companion, because I cannot believe anyone could live with a person, have them collecting all of these things, going to the extent that they have, and say, I didn't know anything about it. I think that would be very hard to believe.
Rather odd, isn't it?
Most definitely. So
I'm sure they're looking into.
Get some information on her. But his issues, he's a detail freak about things. It had to be just right. If it didn't fit into the spectrum of being just right, it would set off buzzwords. We found out that he has been taking medication, and such as this, did this lead to the expediting the situation that he was in, and said no one to be aware of all this. It's a little hard to believe. I feel sorry for the family members, for his brother and the rest of the family, because unfortunately, many people blame through guilt of association, and you can't blame others for what his issues were.
Yeah, it's I know it's hard for people to separate that out. And it is a horrible tragedy that there's no words for it, really.
Oh, absolutely none.
It's so horribly unexpected. And here are these people enjoying themselves at a concert, a very peaceful gathering filled with joy, and then to have this happen. So, but again, there were a lot of heroes that came out of this, people who went above and beyond, to help their fallen concert goers. So,
people
there's
that never thought they had that in them step forward in a way that they can't believe. And one other thing about going back to Paddock, the ammunition that he used was the worst he could have used, because it exploded. It didn't kill people. It shattered those that are still alive. And that's why I say there's going to be a lot more deaths from this. But the end result of the people's lives are marred forever because of what he did.
Yeah, this is not something that you just get over. And our hearts and prayers are with the people who went through this, who are still going through this. Just know that we as Supernatural Girls send love and healing light to everybody involved. And who has not been touched by this? I mean, it's
we've
really
got
horrible.
so many people here in Tucson that are been affected by it, that have lost members in this situation. But I think the most important thing to pay attention to is the fact that we as a nation still come together and care and share. And I call all our angels and guides in anything possible to come together and uplift and make this something special instead of the nightmare that it is.
Exactly. I mean, it is a time to come together. Let's stop this divisiveness over political beliefs or whatever. Yes. Let's get over that, please, and see that humanity has to triumph in these horrible situations. But I want to thank you for taking a look at that insightful numerological expose of him. And as you said before, we were talking before the show started, he was a very intelligent person. He was very detail oriented, and he was clearly over the edge for some reason. Nobody knows yet why. So it's something that I'm sure they'll find out in the coming weeks. So let's hope we figure that out.
Sometimes we find that those that are extremely intelligent and extremely up there, it's a fine line between going forwards or backwards. And unfortunately, he fell off the line.
Intelligence and insanity, as you mentioned, sometimes they're a little too close for comfort. So
exactly.
Very, very difficult times for people who went through this, and all of us watching on the sidelines. But again, our hearts and prayers go out to everybody. And here at Supernatural Girls, we have been praying for everybody since this happened.
Definitely.
So meanwhile, paranormal events are just skyrocketing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we are having more and more UFOs being reported, strange sightings of cryptids. We had a story come out about shape-shifting vampires in Malawi. Now, what in the world is going on there? I mean, The police are having to deal with this in this country, in this area of the world, and they're saying that this is what is happening. So there's an article about that. It's on our Facebook page. Take a look. So on our Supernatural Girls Facebook page, we have that article. We have the UFO that showed up over our property.
Right.
That's still there. Take a look at that. And we also have a picture of a ghost that showed up in a photograph of a mother and child. And in the background, there's this ghostly image of a little girl. And some people were saying, well, is it a trick of the light? I don't think so. To me, this feels like a real apparition. They just happened to capture this little girl at just the right moment. And maybe she was intrigued by the picture that was being taken of the mother and child, and she showed up for that. But it is so clear that this is a little girl's ghost. So take a look at that. That's at Supernatural Girls on our Facebook page. Sign up for the Fringe Files for our newsletter so that you can be informed of everything going on. If you want to ask a question tonight, our chat room is open. You can go to irnchat.com. That's irnchat.com. You can type out your question. We will ask it on your behalf, and Deborah will be happy to answer it. So make sure you go into the irnchat.com area, and you can have a conversation with us right there. So again, a lot going on with the paranormal.
Woohoo, you betcha.
Woo! That's for sure. I have more also wild pictures to post that have showed up from our trail cams on the driveway. So more pictures are showing up, more orbs, more beams of light, more inexplicable things. We don't know what the heck they are. And these are coming from trail cams. So I'm going to be posting more of those. Be sure to check back on our Facebook pages, and you will see the rest of all we have been experiencing here. It's crazy stuff.
We'll talk about the little foxy stuff with that fox of yours. That is so cute.
Fox.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
This fox, he came to the front door the other day. Literally.
You're kidding.
Came right up to the front door. He is gorgeous, and he's our new best friend because he gets rid of all the rodents, all the mice, and the chipmunks. You can never get rid of enough of them. They always, find a way to destroy the stone walls and everything else. So this fox has now made himself at home. And I found out foxes are very territorial. So he comes every day now. Every day. But when I saw him at the front door, I watched him, and he was walking around the house. And then he ended up on a ledge, and he curled up. And those are the photographs I took and posted. Wow. He's absolutely beautiful.
He really is.
So we're happy to have him here, and we hope he stays safe. We know there's some hunters out and about, but we hope they stay away from him because he's a real special friend to us now. So anyhow, we always look twice before we take the dogs out, though.
Oh, I bet so. No snacks here, kid.
No, you got to stay with the rodents. That's all there is to it. Well, now, look, we've got to bring our guest on because she's very special, and we're so glad to have her. She's been very busy. It's been hard to find a time to book her on the show because she's been traveling around doing a book tour, and she's finally in one place, and we got her to agree to come on the show, so we're very honored to have her. And she's written this great book, as you know, Glamour Magic. And so here is who she is. She's very, very special. She's a writer, crafter, and glamour girl, of course, who serves as a frequent contributor to occult pagan media, such as Witchvox, Pagan Square, and Witches and Pagans. She lives in New Jersey, and she's here with us tonight to talk about her new book, Glamour Magic. Deborah, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's our pleasure. Yes.
Definitely.
Now, PK asked you a question. We were off the air, but I think we should start with that question.
Sure.
PK, about, I think it was about why you got involved in glamour magic. Mm-hmm. What was it?
Sure, that's a great starting point. I had said that it's often quickly dismissed because I think most of the community thinks of it as a Hollywood special effect versus a subtle feminine magic. And I think because of the superficial aspects that are associated with it that a lot of people are quick to be very dismissive of it, and there's not a lot of information until I really started doing research about it.
Now, I know what you're talking about because I remember watching Buffy, the Vampire Slayer, one of my favorite all-time
I
series.
love Buffy.
Remember that? Oh, I love Buffy.
Yeah.
And they would talk about doing a glamour spell, which meant like making somebody see something that's not there. Is that what it was? Something more beautiful than what it really is? Mm-hmm. Is that what that? But it's not really what glamour magic is it?
No, because if you actually look at the dictionary definition past the false magic one, which is definition 1, definition 2 is what makes you interesting and exciting to other people. And I think there's a lot more to hang your hat on with what makes you interesting and exciting, and learning how to utilize that both magically and mundanely than, all of us trying to learn how to change the color of our hair just by, doing some magic.
Exactly. Well, then there's so much, there's media at us all the time that we have to look a certain way, we have to be a certain way. And so what's wonderful about your book is you're saying, don't subscribe to that nonsense. Find out what's great about you. So tell us a little bit more about that, because that's all a part of the glamour magic.
Well, I've found, interestingly enough, when talking about this, that a lot of people will say very quickly, oh, I'm not glamorous. And I'm like, yeah, you are. Everyone can be glamorous. That's the thing. We think of very specific kinds of people. We think of Marilyn Monroe. We think about John Hamm, who plays Don Draper on Mad Men. We think about these very Hollywood, very perfect kinds of people. But in nowhere, again, in that definition does it say you must look like the media's representation of beauty. Beauty and glamour are two different things. Beauty is what you're born with. Beauty is about facial symmetry and cultural markers and things that you have nearly zero control over. Glamour is all what you're building. And that's what makes it so interesting to me, because who cares about things that are static? I mean, what can you do with those? But you can do a lot with the things that are less static and more mutable.
And that's glamour magic. And then, but tell me too, if you could, what's the difference between charisma and glamour? Because, you look at a lot of these people and actors, they have that X factor, that charisma. It makes you want to watch them. And not everybody has that. So, but what's the difference between that and glamour?
I mean, yes, there's that. They used to talk about charm a whole lot, like in the 1950s, and how to be charming, perfectly charming, and which is interesting because, again, that's another word that has that magical connotation that goes with it. While charisma and charm are part of it, let's say you're someone who's very shy, who doesn't necessarily exude that. It's learning how to take that shyness that's part of you and turn it into something that you can use as part of your glamour, versus instead of it being a detriment, that you can learn to shape it into something that is going to help you in your great work.
And when you talk about great work, can you explain a little bit more about what you mean? What is great work?
Sure. Great work is technically an alchemical term, but really what it means to me is, what do you want more than anything? And that's a taboo subject even in modern occult and witchcraft circles, that we're only supposed to want what the gods gave us. And that's kind of a Judeo-Christian kind of idea to a certain extent. And instead, it's sort of taking that and saying, this is what I really want, and I'm going to be really upfront about it, and I'm willing to do whatever my moral compass dictates is acceptable for me to do to obtain it. You're saying, no, not like, oh, it would be nice if it happened. You were saying, no, I need this to happen. And there's a difference between the two. And I think women especially are socialized to not go after those things and not to be so forceful about it.
And if we are, then we're called names.
Yes, very, very not nice names.
Right.
Well, you
So it's not
think back
fair.
to the silent era when the glamour was, there was nothing to show except for expressions, hand gestures, and facial expressions.
Absolutely. And you could tell a whole story that way. And that's part of it too. All of these little cues that make up our daily interactions that we tend to sort of overlook.
I also, what we really liked, PK and I were talking about, is when you talk about fiercely.
Yes.
Not just going after what you want, but fiercely.
Fiercely, yeah.
Going after. I love that. Don't you love that? Fiercely going after what you want. You know, with abandon, it's like, let's just go for it. Talk to us about that concept. This is something new.
I sort of talk about it as getting into a chicken fight with the universe. And when you get into that fierce place where you start to think you're not going to be the one who blinks first, that's usually where it really starts to happen. But yeah, because we're taught, we're sort of socialized to be nice girls, and nice girls wait patiently, and nice girls accept what is given to them. It's that sort of, I call it a princess mentality. Like you think about in fairy tales, like that you would be lifted up to that you could one day, you know, go from spinning straw into gold to being, you know, a princess or whatever. But we also have the flip side of that, where we are told if you dare to be a bad girl, you will be struck down. You will be taken down at all costs. We see it again in the fairy tale narratives, but we see it also in modern narratives. If you look at reality TV and things like that, where it's very clear, if you are willing to play the villainess, you are going to get yours. And so I propose that we take sort of the best of both of those and merge them within ourselves to work with, because you have to be a little bad to get what you want, not in, again, a way that goes against your own personal moral compass, but you have to be willing to do things that aren't typically considered what a feminine person is supposed to be doing. And, you know, think about some of the women in the media who have very strong personalities and the way they're treated versus, say, a young ingenue, you know, and you need to be able to take that, you know, naughtiness, that badness, along with that goodness, that, you know, wanting to see this through and put them together so that you can accomplish the things you're trying to accomplish. I believe personally that everyone has a great work, even if it's not something like artistic. Maybe it's you really want children, maybe it's you really want marriage, maybe it's you really want to own your own company, maybe it's all of these kinds of things that we can be kind of wishy-washy about in trying to accomplish, instead of really putting all our whole hearts, our whole souls, our whole brains into it. And I think because on some level there's some fear of rejection. If I give this everything I've got and I don't succeed, then what? And I think that then what sometimes leads you on an even more exciting path, because that's where a lot of great stories come from. Like there's a musical group called The Tiny, and the main singer, she used to be a professional figure skater, and that's a very short shelf life. So to have gone from that into a musical career, to me, is very exciting, because you took all of that discipline, all of that you know, showmanship, and then you put it into something new, something that you can sustain. And I think that's fantastic. So I mean, technically speaking, when you age out, I guess you failed as, a professional athlete, but not necessarily. That's when you get to go on to your next adventure and figuring out what that is.
Which is great. And as you said, so many of us have been trained to be good girls, to sit and wait. But you have rituals in the book that help people get in touch with what their great work may be and to help them to move beyond it. So maybe you could take us through one of those rituals and they're so much fun. All of them are. You have such a great variety of fun rituals. And that's, again, what we love about your book. Your book is a fun book, but it's also a powerful book. Very powerful. So,
and I definitely wanted it to be fun. I mean, there's a lot of really dry, sort of books to tell you how to improve your life and your magical practice. And I'd love to say I'm that kind of scholar, but I'm not. I engage in a lot of pop culture and media, and I want that to be part of how we move forward. But going back to the rituals, one of the things that was very important, as we were talking about earlier before we went on air, is that I often felt really constricted when reading magical books because it was very do this, do this, do this, do this, and then you get that. And I didn't always find that to be the case for me. And sometimes the things to be done were not things that really worked for me. And I mean, I'm all for stepping outside your comfort zone to get to know what you want to do, and not just doing the same old. Like if you always cast a circle, you should do something different on occasion just to see what it does. But I very intentionally set objectives versus like, here's the format. Like I gave sort of creative suggestions of like, hey, maybe like when you're trying to find your personal great work, go someplace that's safe but unfamiliar to you in the outdoors, because it's taking you out of your comfort zone right there. And then you can start to really think on that. And I talk about, because I'm a terrible meditator, I'm the worst.
No, I am.
Because as the minute someone says that you have to close your eyes, I'm already punched out because I don't like what to do, But I really encourage the reader to get past that boredom, past that discomfort, past all of that, until you really leave knowing, like in a crystallized sentence or two, what you want to do. And, how you get there is a later ritual, but you need to know what your intention is. And that's a very important part to it. You have to set your intention and figure out what that great work is, because that's what I found really interesting in talking to more people. I'm one of those weirdos who knew what my great work was from like the time I was 8 years old. I wanted to be an author. That was my like great work. That was what I always wanted to do. But even, for instance, my husband, he didn't know what he wanted to do. Like it took him a lot more exploration. And I think this book can be powerful, whichever personality type you are, whether it's you need more help at the beginning or you need more help at the end. It doesn't matter how long it takes to get there. You just have to eventually get there.
Exactly. And you bring up a good point about having an intent, having a focus, because the other thing, my friends, women friends, we tend to think on multi-levels. We tend to think and multitask. So it's to just sit down and go, okay, I want this one thing. It's like it's against our religion or something. It's really not that easy to do.
Well, we want to add like 12 layers to the cake. It's like, and I want to be a firefighter, and I want to be a princess, and,
Right. That's it. So some of your rituals are helpful in the place where it makes it more consolidated. It helps us align to a specific purpose and stay on that purpose. Because that's part of the problem, I think, for a lot of us, is we get off track easily.
When you said you always wanted to be a writer, was the topic what you've ended up being a writer on, or were there other things that you thought?
Oh, no, I had a very intense novel at 8 about Christina Columbus, who was Christopher Columbus's unknown sister, and all of her many trips and travels, and it was in a hot pink spiral notebook. So, no, I mean, I've written so many things, but one of the aspects I like about this is I get to talk about my personal experience, and if we're talking like the breadth and width of my writing, I've been blogging since, let's see, I think I was 23, so a while.
Yeah, a long
So
time.
I really like that.
That's
Well, hey,
wonderful.
everybody, I want you to just hang tight because we've got a lot to talk about, a lot to learn about glamour magic tonight with Deborah Castellano and her new book, Glamour Magic. We're going to take a short commercial break. We'll be right back. You're listening to Supernatural Girls Radio. Welcome back, everyone, to Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker. I am here with my co-host, Patricia Kirkman, PK, and our wonderful guest tonight, very special guest.
Right.
Her name is Deborah Castellano, and she is the author of a beautiful book, Glamour Magic. There it is. The beautiful
There
book.
it is twice.
It's a fun book. It's a wonderful book. And
It
we
is.
just so enjoyed it. Got a lot of questions coming in from the chat room
terrific.
for you, Deborah, so we'll ask a few. So Roger's asking, how long has Deborah been practicing witchcraft?
20 years. My home groups, so to speak, in addition to the work I do on my own, are my Dianic Coven and my Druid Grove, which is part of ADF.
Okay. And Brian Gresham is asking, where can we get her book again? Amazon, right? Has it? Amazon.com, bookstores.
Yes, your local bookstore will certainly order it for you. Also, Barnes and Noble and straight from Llewellyn.
Ah,
Okay.
Great.
Well, there's different ways you can get the book. Here's another interesting question from Bluebird. Do you have to belong to a coven to be a real witch?
That's an awesome question. I know a lot of solitary practitioners who have never belonged to a coven. I think that's between you and your spirits, you know, and I think you can be just as real of a witch.
You bring your phone everywhere. Work, school, the movies. Now you can bring it to an Xfinity store for an easy way to switch to Xfinity Mobile, a new kind of network designed to save you money. You can get up to 5 lines of talk and text included with Xfinity Internet at no extra cost, so all you pay for is data. It's never been easier to switch to Xfinity Mobile and keep the phone you love. Click here to see how. Sorry, I gotta take this. Restrictions apply. Limited to select mobile phones. Requires activation of a new line of Xfinity Mobile. Up to 5 devices per account. New Xfinity Internet customers limited to up to 2 lines pending activation of Internet service.
If you've never joined a coven, if you've never practiced any kind of black magic, I mean, it's all about the work you do.
That's great. So there's all this such freedom in witchcraft from what I've found, and practicing witches. There's so many different ways to practice the craft. So that's great. And now let's see. Is it fair to classify witchcraft as a cult? That question comes from Katie.
Hi, Katie.
Katie wants to know. Is this a cult?
I mean, technically, Christianity's a cult, you know, like
yeah,
if
really.
we're going down that rabbit hole. That also sort of it's dependent on the fact that we all have a unified belief structure, which we don't. If you've got 5 witches in a room, I can tell you you've got 5 different opinions on how to do things. I think there would have to be a lot more unifying factors for it to be a cult. I think also there would have to be more of a group mindset that just does not exist.
No, it certainly doesn't.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Now, Kellyanne wants to know, do you do any private sessions like on Skype?
Yes. When you get my information, feel free to reach out to me and we can talk about that.
And how can people get a hold of you?
The best way would probably be to email me. My email address is Deborah, DEBORAH, at DeborahMCastellano.com.
Okay, so that's how you can reach Deborah Kellyanne and see if you want to set up a private session. And what do you do in your private sessions? Do you instruct people in how to use glamour magic in their lives?
It depends on what they're looking for. I do some divination generally through tarot. I sometimes will make magical goods for people to use in their practice. I definitely do that as part of my personal business. Like, I make a lot of different kinds of ritual oils that I sell. Also, we could talk about instructing and things like that, or help with specific problems, and figure out where we're going to go with that.
That's wonderful. Excellent. Now, here's an...
Go ahead.
Okay.
I was just going to ask how her husband feels about what she does.
Oh, he's one too. So
okay, that was the question. But I tried to come in through the back door.
No, he's totally a witch too. So we both were when we met, and if anything, the only issue is there's always, he's got guy friends who are also occultists, and they're like, "That's so cool. Your wife knows what you're doing." It's like, no, it's not, because she knows what I'm doing. She'll be like, "Not in the house."
She really knows what I'm doing. Is that it?
Like, nope, take it outside.
That's cute.
Here's another question that's an interesting one from Brian in the chat room. How do you get past all the negative stereotypes that the word witch evokes?
I mean, that's a really good question. Part of it, strangely enough, is to step into all of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you step into the Glenda, the good witch, and you also step into the wicked witch of the West, or more modernly and wicked, you've got Elfie and Glenda, and you have to accept that sometimes people are going to see you like Glenda, the good witch, who's just here for love and light and, to practice positive things only, and other people are going to think you're tearing around Oz on your broomstick. And the best thing you can do is just to let people get to know you, because when they see you as a person, they can step past that identity as being the only factor to you. They can see that you're not just that one thing. And I think in certain ways the same could be said about, like, if you were gay, if you were a feminist, if you were like lots of things that have very specific connotations. The only way people are going to see that you're more than that is seeing how you actually apply it to your life.
Exactly. That's a great answer.
It is, definitely.
Yes.
Definitely.
Here's a question from Velvet. Velvet wants to know, how do you see the goddess and God?
I personally see the goddess and God as the goddess and God, but I also see many goddesses and many gods. And I don't necessarily believe they all go back to one source as some kind of Pokemon sort of situation where they're all part of the same thing. I also think when you're dealing with deities, like for instance the Morrigan, that's an office. It's not one specific deity. It's whoever your local Morrigan would be. That was the way that particular deification worked. So I think there's a lot of room for that. I personally see the gods and goddesses as, beings that are much bigger than us, that tend to they see more of the chessboard than we do, and they're making moves we can't fathom yet. And it's not always for good. It's not always for bad. And I don't know that it's always this mysterious, there's a plan per se, but everyone's making moves, and those moves have consequences,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. the way you just described that about the chessboard. Here is a question from Stormtrooper. Would like to know, how can I find a reliable teacher?
Okay. Here's what I'm going to tell you to do first before you do anything. Look at their actual life. Are they leading a life that is something that you feel you would like to emulate? Is it something like, wow, I'd sure like that in 5 years, 10 years? Or is it like, oh my God, what a train wreck? And if you're looking at it and you're like, well, they seem to have their life pretty together. They seem to be making about as much money as I would like to be making, because that's a factor. If you want help in all these things, let's say you really want help with like your money magic stuff, and they're not super into money, they're only going to be able to do so much for you on that.
Good point.
Yeah. So, I mean, like if you want help in love and they've been divorced 4 times, and are kind of embittered about it, maybe not the best, like,
not the best teacher.
Nope. And I mean, really look at how long have they been practicing? What do they do in their community? What is their reputation like in the local community? It's not, in my opinion, a bad thing if they are potentially charging, because everyone's time, in my opinion, is worth something. But is it something you can afford to pay? Is it something that seems reasonable? A reasonable exchange. It should still be a reasonable exchange. If you feel that, let's say for instance, they ask you for like $50 a lesson and you feel like that is a reasonable number, then go with it. I would also say, check out your local scene, see who the elders are. Some of my closest mentors, don't officially teach. They would recoil at being like considered official teachers, but they like to do more of a skill trade and share their knowledge that way. And that's valuable too. Make friends. Barring anything else, make friends. Make friends who are leading lives that you feel in line with, and learn from them too.
That makes good sense.
Excellent. Yes.
No, definitely.
Katie is asking that she noticed you have a saint sitting on the shelf behind you. Who is that?
Oh, he's not mine. He's my husband's.
Okay.
That's Saint Cyprian. That is my husband's favoriteest saint. I personally am a Mary Magdalene girl. But Saint Cyprian is very popular with the boys in the occult spheres right now. The female equivalent, in case you're curious, is Saint Justine. She did a lot of work that's similar to what Saint Cyprian did.
Tell us a little more about Saint Justine. What did Saint Justine do?
They both were considered necromancers.
Really? Wow.
Many crazy stories about saints in the Catholic Church. Like Saint Christopher was considered to have like a dog head, like an actual dog head. There's Saint, I'm gonna, in my house we call him Saint Doggy. Winifred. We call him Saint Doggy because he was an actual doggy in the Middle Ages, and the church, when they came to go verify all of his accomplishments, thought he was a person. And then they were like, no, he's a dog, but he did a lot of really cool things. And
wow.
No, the church wasn't into it, but they still do.
That.
Yeah, but they never let go of him in France. They've always loved Saint Doggy.
Wow. Now, is this at all similar to the dog-headed gods in Egypt? I mean, that sounds like it rings a bell there.
There's definitely been arguments that there's been crossovers, like between that, between, I believe it's Dionysus, Shiva, and then I want to say someone else whose name's escaping me, but that there were points where scholars, followers, even potentially the gods themselves, cross paths and we're like, oh, hey, you're similar to me. I'm similar to you. That's cool. What do you do? This is what I do. And sometimes when you're at a crossroad place, you get a little bit of all of that together.
Interesting. Now, someone's also asking about your beautiful necklace. They want to know what type of jewelry are you wearing? It's so gorgeous. What is that? They want to know. So,
I'll get a little closer so you can see it. No, you can't. But it's a large piece of amethyst. Part of, like I said, I do have a business where I sell my ritual oils, etc., and that show's usually on the road. So at one of the shows I was doing, there was a girl doing wire wrap jewels, and she just really loved candles. At the time I sold candles as well, and we just swapped. She swapped me candles for this, and it's one of my favorite pieces, and it's very meaningful to me because of my Dianic group, because amethyst is our stone.
it's beautiful. Yeah,
Thank
beautiful. Obviously, everybody's noticing it tonight. It's wonderful. You mentioned in your book, you have these little historical notes that you've shared with us, and they're fascinating. Do you have a favorite from history?
I do. I'm always torn. It depends on the day of the week. I would say right now my favorite is Anne of Cleves, who's not in the book, but she is a wife of Henry VIII. And the reason I like her is because, to me, out of all the wives, she won the game. And I say that because so she is married off to Henry during a time where he's already kind of gotten rid of a couple wives. So there's a famous story about a countess in Italy that he proposes to, and she said, if I had 2 necks, I'd be happy to, but I only have 1, so no. Which is pretty, it's pretty, hardcore for dealing with a monarch to be like that.
That's right, to be so flip. Yeah.
Yeah. But Anne of Cleves sort of knew a little bit what she was walking into, and she was part of a Protestant nation, a Germanic one, and that was very important at the time because, that was still all getting off the ground. And she gets there, and the first thing, and this is on record, he says is, I like her not. And it depends on whose account it is, whether she was pretty, but just pretty in a different way than he was used to, like a larger busted, more voluptuous kind of girl. Like she was very diligent to learn to do the things he liked to do, like gamble and play cards and all that kind of stuff. But when it came down to it, he wanted to marry someone else because he could not perform with her for whatever reason.
Oh my.
Yes, he was having problems with
things
that.
a little difficult.
And so he says, okay, we're not going to get Germany basically all up in arms. How about I'll say you're my sister? And you get everything that comes with that. You get huge palaces, a huge allowance, and basically you can do whatever you want to do when you want to do it. And she didn't fight him. Like, I think she saw the writing on the wall and was like, that sounds way better than being married to you because you're kind of a pain. So I also don't want to be a
dangerous
head shorter.
pain.
Yeah, I don't want to be a head shorter like your other wives.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to do that because I'm tired of dudes telling me what to do because my brother was busy doing that back in Germany and now you're busy doing that and now no one will want to marry me. But that's not necessarily a bad thing here, and I don't need to join a convent. So yeah, I'm hideous. I'm no wonder why you can't afford, perform with me. Who could, right? How many palaces do I get, right?
Wow. She knew what she was doing.
Yeah, I think she did a bit, and she would come to court, and she, I believe, outlived just about all of them.
Amazing.
Yeah, so she was the winner in my opinion. So she's my favorite for that.
I think she was. That's a great story. Well, and again, there's so many women in these very difficult situations throughout history that you reference in the book. It was so fascinating to read these things and see how they fared, how they handled themselves, how they used glamour magic to basically get themselves through. It's great stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, to me, it's so powerful because if they could do the things that they did when they weren't even supposed to be considered people, when they weren't always educated or beautiful or well-connected, or sometimes had fallen out of favor, but still could make progress, what can't we do with an iPhone,
Yeah.
Good point.
Right. Right. Well, that's just an amazing story. Again, one of many in this great book, Glamour Magic by Deborah Castellano, again, which you can purchase on Amazon or Barnes and Noble in bookstores directly from Llewellyn. Also, it's a great book. And there, again, I'm impressed with the amount of history that you pulled into this. Isn't it fascinating, PK?
It is. It's mind-boggling. The more you read, the more you want to dig into other aspects of it. I was curious now. Your husband's involved with being a witch. You're involved with being a witch. How did the male-female cross over to make it this warm fuzzies? How's that?
We love to talk shop together. We read some of the same books together, but outside of puja practice, which is like an offering practice to Hindu deities, and that's a very basic thing that doesn't require any initiation, anything. So it's pretty open to the world, so to speak. We just do such different things that we don't often work together because it always feels like a model UN meeting, to try to get somewhere. And but it's just nice being with someone who knows what you're doing, what you're trying to accomplish, how you're trying to get there, who may have ideas of what would work for you because they know your practice, and vice versa. And that makes it a lot of fun.
What does he do on an everyday basis?
He's a massage therapist, and he's going to school to become a nurse right now. It's a very competitive program, and he's doing that on top. That's where he is right now. It's actually
amazing. Yeah. That's great. So it takes care of body and soul, huh?
Absolutely.
Yes. That's nice. It's funny because we have another question on the heels of what PK just asked from Tall White, who's saying, do you do this full time or do you have a regular 9-to-5 job?
I have a regular 9-to-5 because we both really like having health care. So
yeah, these days that's important, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work for a small accounting firm. So it's about as opposite to this as you can possibly imagine. And they know what I do, the broad strokes. They know I have a book out. I was actually writing this book last tax season, and oh my goodness, it was one of the hardest things I've ever done because you're working such crazy hours.
Oh, definitely.
Yes.
And then you'd go home, you'd work some more, you go to bed, you do it again. And it was like this very chop wood, carry water kind of time in my life.
Yeah. Wow. Those must have been so intense.
It really was.
But he's paying off in your best interest at this time.
Yes, I'm very grateful for that. Yes.
Well, we're going to take another short commercial break, but also I just want to mention again, everybody, go to the Facebook page for Supernatural Girls. Give us a like, follow us on Facebook, and you can take a look at that ghost photograph and read about the vampire shapeshifters in Malawi. Be glad they're not here. My God, they sound horrible. So anyways, they can keep them there in that country. Thank you very much. And take a read through all of the things that we have on that page. We're always posting new paranormal stories, new events, and all the crazy stuff that we're finding on our own trail cams here at the castle in the Berkshires. Don't miss any of it. So go to Supernatural Girls on Facebook. You can also visit our website, which is supernaturalgirls.com, and sign up there for the Fringe Files. So we are going to take a short break again, and you are listening to Supernatural Girls Radio. We will be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker. I am here with my co-host, Patricia Kirkman, PK, and our wonderful guest, Deborah Castellano, the author of a great book, highly recommend it, Fabulous History, Fabulous Rituals, How to Use Glamour Magic.
Always the glamour.
That's right. Fiercely get what you want. Well, that's what we want to do. We want to get what we want.
Oh, God, yes.
Enough of this already. Okay, we got to get what we want. Now, we want to talk about Saint Expedite.
Right.
You hear he's sometimes a little reluctant, but we want to know more about him because it sounds like we want him on our side. So tell us about him.
Sure. Saint Expedite probably comes from New Orleans. There's an urban tale, I don't know how true it is, that he arrived in a box marked Expedite and they started calling him Saint Expedite. I don't know how true that is, but he can be a little finicky. Like, he does not want to be friends with me or my husband particularly. And it's not malicious. I think he just really needs to like you. So the best way to start any relationship is with offerings, because like when you go to someone's house, you bring a cake, a bottle of wine, a something to be like, oh, hey, thanks for inviting me over. So you would want to offer, he really likes rum, he really likes pound cake. So see, he seems like he'd be my pal, but he's not into it. And then like...
when you say that he's not into it, he just doesn't show up, so you don't form a communication?
Like there's no indication whatsoever that our offerings were received. They weren't spurned, but they weren't like, usually the signals we would get that the conversation is opening didn't happen. So I think it was more like call blocking, you know what I mean?
Oh.
Big help.
Who does he think he is?
Right.
Yes.
So definitely don't start by asking for a bunch of stuff to begin with, because I mean, we just gave him, cake and rum and he still didn't want to talk to us. So I wouldn't bring your Santa list yet. I would try to make some offerings, and then usually you ask for some kind of omen that he has received them or he is interested. Sometimes they'll show up in dreams. Sometimes you can tell from a song. There's all kinds of ways. Keep making offerings maybe 3 times to see what happens. If you don't get anything, he's not that into you. If you get something, then, start the relationship. Find out what else he's into. Find out like if he has a specific prayer, if he has a vigil candle. I bet he does, probably through the original Botanica in the Bronx, I believe, would probably, and they do mail order and stuff, would likely have a candle for him. And then ask for something small, and see if he's into it, and, ask for a few small things, and, again, keep giving in return, keep opening yourself up to having a relationship together. And then, once you start to get a little comfier, cozier, that's when you can start asking for more things. And one of the things he's known for is for granting things in a hurry. So if you're doing all this,
you love it? Oh, I love that.
Yes. Maybe that's also why he's a little choosy. If he's known to be sort of the FedEx of the saints, like you don't have to take everyone.
I can just see him pulling up right now.
Yeah.
Wearing his browns.
That is great. The FedEx, I love that. So where does he come from? You said New Orleans is his home.
Yes, although I believe, if I'm remembering the lore correctly, he was a Roman soldier in his life.
Okay.
So, definitely do a little research, get to know him a little bit, see if he's your kind of guy, and you'll find out if you're his kind of person.
That is so great. I love that. We're going to try this out, PK.
Right.
You're going to try
to.
this out with me? Okay.
I have a question.
Try to contact them.
When you try to bribe them with the goodies, and they do come to you, how into you can they be, or are you with them?
Does
that make sense?
Yeah, totally. It really depends. Sometimes, it's a cordial relationship. I mean, the best way that I can describe it is just like in real life. You know how sometimes with friends, like it takes a while to build that friendship and find all that common ground, but once you get there, it's really steady. And then there are friends who you immediately click with and you want to like braid each other's hair and stay up all night telling each other everything. And then there are friends who start out as really good friends, but turns out are not a good match for you, for whatever reason, because God, saints, spirits, they all have their own agenda too. And it's not all malicious, but it's not all good either. And it's like people's agendas aren't all altruistic either. And they're not all malicious either. And it's also important to keep in mind, like, think about when you would ask your mom for something or a spouse or whatever, what they think is best for you may not always gel with what you think is best for you.
That's right.
They have your best intention in mind there. They still want to do right by you, but it's not going to necessarily match exactly. So as long as you keep those kinds of things in mind, it usually goes pretty well.
What if you're into a saint or a guide, and then all of a sudden you realize this isn't a fit, and you're trying to back out, but they don't let go? How does one handle that one?
That is a hard thing, just like in real life, like when you've got an ex-boyfriend who doesn't want to like keep it moving. So I had an issue with that with a deity who I'm not going to name just because I don't want to draw her attention.
Okay.
But, because of the things that she was associated with, and she was a real big doer and getting things done. In that particular situation, my mentor suggested you have to be really boring, really uninteresting. So she kind of loses interest and keeps it moving. You just watch television, go to work, don't do anything interesting, don't drink anything interesting, don't eat anything interesting, like all nutritious stuff for about a week or two until she's like, never mind, it's not worth it. In other circumstances, you might need to get your other spirits or guides involved to basically be like, he needs to go,
Wow.
Can they be harmful to you when they act like that, when they don't want to let go?
I have not had that happen, but I know that there have been people who do. Like I said, everyone's intentions aren't always good. And it's not like, oh, if you work with X deity, it's always going to be like that. Or if you work with Y deity, they'll never, ever do that. I mean, people are changeable and so are deity, like how they interact with you, and how they interact with me may be different than how they interact with you. And in Hoodoo, there's sort of in Santeria, there's kind of this idea that whatever god or goddess you're interacting with, that's your god or goddess. You have that piece of them that is your tiny shard of this much bigger being that you're interacting with. And
You're Paul. I'm the new Sprintern.
Sprint Plus.
Intern. Yeah, clever, right? Looking at getting an amazing iPhone 8?
Yeah, because
now you can lease one iPhone 8, get the other one on Sprint to give your second phone to your new friend.
And you get the best price for unlimited.
And now lease one iPhone 8 and get a second one on us. Visit your local Sprint store, sprint.com/iPhone, or call 1-800-SPRINT1 today.
iPhone 8 64 gigabyte $29.17 a month. Second iPhone 8 after $29.17 a month. Credit applied within 2 bills. Requires 2 new lines or 1 new and 1 upgrade with 18-month leases. Early termination results in full balance due. Excludes tax subject to credit and third activation restrictions apply.
Shard may be different than your shard. Probably not completely radically so, but different enough that some stuff may seem inconsistent even though it is in the larger picture.
Interesting.
Wow.
Makes you stop and think.
Yeah, it does. Good questions, PK.
But you gotta be careful. I mean, just like you shouldn't marry someone after you've only known them for 2 weeks, you shouldn't do the equivalent of that.
No more of that, PK.
Oh, God, here I go again.
No more marrying
Back
after
to celibacy.
You shouldn't do that with that either. You need to get to know them, and like if you can start to see it's a bad fit sooner rather than later, there's going to be less ill feelings. The more you can look at it like a human relationship, the easier it is. But just remember it's not going to be equal, most likely, you know?
That's right.
They
Here's
get
a
the
question
last
for
word.
you. This is from Mr. Axiomatic. The Wiccan Reed says, and it harm none, do as you will. Does that mean a witch can do anything they want and it's okay if they can just justify the action to themselves?
That's a good question. I would say the first place to start with that is, first off, you'd have to be Wiccan. Not every witch is Wiccan. Some people follow more of an occultist path. Some people are druids. Some people are heathens. There's a lot of other people who don't necessarily subscribe to that. It's just not part of their personal ideology. What that actually means in terms of Wicca is that you are to work to harm none. You are to work to not justify it, but you are to work to only do things that are going to bring positivity into the world and into other people's lives.
Okay. So, yeah, and you talk a lot about in your book, go after what you want, go after it fiercely, but make sure you can live with yourself in what you're doing.
Yeah.
Make sure that this is in alignment with who you are morally.
Absolutely, because I don't have to sleep with you at night. I have to sleep with me at night. And you're the only one who knows what you can sleep with at night. And I mean, it can be little things. Like, we've all done little social faux pas, or we said something we didn't mean to say, or we got more heated than we meant to be, and we had regrets and we felt badly about it, the next day, the next few days. But the point is like, I'm not going to give you this easy to follow moral compass, because what I think is okay to do in life isn't necessarily going to be what you think is okay to do in life. And you have to really define that for yourself. That's really important. Like, you shouldn't just do whatever it takes. You should do whatever lines up with your moral compass.
It's so important, isn't it? It really is. Because I know there's a lot of sayings that go around about that. Do what you will is the whole of the law and all of that. And yeah, you still have to live with yourself at the end of the day. You have to sleep with yourself, like you said, at night, and you have to be comfortable with your choices. And you're right. We all screw up. We all do things we wish we hadn't done, or say things we wish we never said. So those are mistakes, and we hopefully learn from them. But we have to be comfortable with our choices and how we go about getting our goals met.
Right, absolutely.
So here's more. We have tons of questions for you tonight. Just tons. Let's see. Okay. What is the purpose of performing ceremonies skyclad? That's from Furious Euler.
I mean, I've never been super into it because there's no pockets. It makes it difficult sometimes to, I mean, I don't know, like, I don't want to worry about lighting myself on fire, but some people do prefer that. And that's just because it makes them feel closer to their gods and goddesses, and to also really get in touch with that primal aspect of witchcraft.
Yeah. Okay. Plus, in the Northeast, it's kind of chilly usually. So
yeah, it is.
That doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay. And again, here's another question about how can someone find out more about witchcraft? So again, Bernie is writing that, obviously interested.
I would say start by, again, the best thing to do would be to start by Googling Pagan Pride Project, and that'll lead you to events in your local area that are held by various groups. So you'll get to meet people not just from one group, but lots of different groups. And you can talk to them. There'll be classes. That's a good starting point. Reading, you can't go wrong with that. Popular beginner choices are Scott Cunningham, Starhawk. I personally like Thorn Coyle. She's a little more advanced, but also very good. And to just keep exploring and learning, and to not be afraid to try some ritual projects for yourself.
Yeah, good advice. And Now, here's a funny question, and this is from Tomi Matsura. If I become a witch, will I be able to do all that cool stuff I see in movies and on TV?
Man, I hope so. I mean, if you can, let me know, because I'd like to do what you're doing then. Generally speaking, it's not that cool. It's a lot of repetition and your spice cabinet. But, you know, it would be neat if it did that. But, I mean, what you will get from it that would be somewhat similar to the movies, so to speak, is a really well done ritual is something really beautiful to participate in. And you'll get to be part of that beauty and wonder.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Right. Exactly.
Are you involved with a lot of different ceremonial projects?
I'm not a huge ceremonial person. That's also, again, more my husband's bag. I'm a little more free flow with it, and I don't like a whole lot of rules, as we've established. But I do what I personally like to do. Again, if we're talking a little deeper in the woods, it's kind of a difficult book to get right now because it's old. But I like some of the work from New Avatar Power. If you look on Amazon, you might be able to get a book. We lucked out and got one with a broken spine, so it was very affordable, but sometimes it's pretty expensive.
Okay. Now, here's a question from Jose Livingston. Are Wicca and witchcraft the same thing?
Not necessarily. Many Wiccans do practice witchcraft, but not all witches are Wiccan.
Okay, there you have it.
Thanks to stop and think real quick.
I know, really. These are some really good questions.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have any cool crafts to show us on camera? So some of the things that you make, can you show us?
Oh, gosh, what do I... I do not come prepared. I can show you some of, like... Actually, I built this little terrarium for work that I'm trying to rebuild. I haven't fully rebuilt it yet. Still sort of working that out. I'm trying to see what I have.
Because you make candles, you said, still? You do the candles?
Not anymore on the
candles.
If I move my computer, I have some of my ritual oils. What's holding it up? Okay. So we've got like... that way.
Okay, so you have your oils, your essential oils.
Yeah, that I blend together myself. That's Jadis from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Amulet for protection. So some of that. I also hand spin yarn, but that's in the other room. And I do that on a spinning wheel.
Right.
Yeah, so it keeps me busy.
Now, your web page that you have?
If you go to charmedfinishingschool.com, you'll find my book, you'll find how to contact me, you'll find a link to my shop. So everything that you want this podcast, other podcasts.
Great.
So my events coming up, where I'm going to be, what I'm going to be doing. So yeah.
Oh, great.
And give us the name of that again, Deborah.
It's
Charms.
www.charmedfinishingschool.com.
I love that.
Great. That's
so
good.
Cute.
That's neat.
Yes, I like that.
And if you go through the archives there, you'll see a lot of writing on glamour, some work on hoodoo. I mean, if you really scroll around and play around, I've written something crazy, like over 800 entries there. So
oh my,
something interesting.
Busy girl.
Yeah.
You have another book.
It is. Let me ask you a question about the crossroads, because that comes up a lot in television shows like Supernatural. They talk a lot about the crossroads and then doing spells at the crossroads and how powerful it is.
Oh, yeah.
What can you tell us about that? Is that for real?
That is for real. That is for very serious work that you're doing. It's often associated with Hecate. if you are doing darker magic, you would bury things at the crossroads often, and then not look back. But it can be for things where you're just very serious, like if you want to make your vow about your great work, but never, ever, ever make a vow you cannot keep, or you will not keep, or you wind up breaking. You can't be lazy about that, because if you want to get your spirits and guides all kinds of ticked off, that is the fastest way to do it. And not only will they not help you, but they may do things to actively show their displeasure. So
Ooh.
be really,
Wow.
really
So you don't want to fool
careful
around with
that.
the crossroads
No.
magic. That's very serious stuff.
Yeah, that's not like I'm mad at my boyfriend tonight kind of things. You know,
Right.
it's when you're really seriously intending to do something. That's where you make vows. That's where you leave offerings, sometimes for like your ancestors. Yeah, that's when you're kind of showing them, hey, I'm really serious about this.
What would you consider a good offering for your ancestors?
This time of year, apples are great just because of the seasonal association, but also it's very animal friendly. So that's nice too, because when you leave something, it's nice that, you know, you're not going to accidentally kill any wildlife. And it's got a lot of just good connotations along with like
That's
All
good to
Souls Day and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So that's a very inexpensive and eco-friendly thing to do.
Hmm. And with the All Souls, All Saints Days coming up, do you have a specific ritual that you go through at that time of year, this time of year?
I sometimes attend Grove of the Other, my Groves ritual. Sometimes I generally, that actually marks the death of an recent ancestor I was very, very close to. So I usually do something to mark that. And I do little silly things too. Like my best friend and I always watch The Craft. You know, we always go to our
That's
favorite
great.
Oh, that's
creepy
good.
cemetery with munchkins.
Yeah.
That's what we do. You know, like little things like that are my markers.
Oh, how neat.
It's wonderful, and I think this is what you've also embraced in your book is the joy and the humor in all of this too. That you know, it's all one, and that's what makes your book so much fun to read. And again, so informative. I mean, this historical stuff really piqued my interest. All of these
thank
women
you.
you mentioned. I mean, Joan of Arc, and oh my goodness, on and on you went about all of these women and what they've done. You know, who has come before us in very trying times. Very
Yes, absolutely.
Oh gosh, but you've done a great job with this book. And
Excellent.
again, please give out your website again. It's Charm.
It's charmedfinishingschool.com.
Okay, good. And we want everybody to be able to go there.
Definitely.
Everybody to be able to buy your wonderful book. We're going to be doing these rituals. We're going to try to get a hold of the Saint Expedite. We're going to be
Great.
We're
Oh,
going to
yes.
be letting you know if we can get a hold of it. Here again, everybody, is this beautiful book written by Deborah Castellano, Glamour Magic, the Witchcraft Revolution to Get What You Want. That's what it's all about. So, again, this has been a wonderful evening.
Oh,
with
gosh,
you,
yes.
Deborah.
I've
Gosh.
enjoyed myself so much. Thank you so much for having me.
It was
Our
fun.
pleasure. And
You
we're
have to
gonna
hurry up
make-
and write another book so you can come back.
That's right. It's like, okay,
Dude.
Oh,
we know
good girl.
that's your great work, and so we know you're not just a one-trick pony here. We know you've
That's
got
right.
more coming through.
Always.
We can all enjoy your next book equally. And this has been just great fun. And thank you so very, very much for joining us tonight. So
you.
everybody, we'll be back again next week. We've got Nick Redfern. We're going to be talking about all the spooky stuff because it is Spooky October on Supernatural Girls. We have cryptids. We've got black-eyed kids. We've got ghost stories for you. Nick has it all. So he's going to come scare the pants off us next week. We just can't wait, right? PK?
It's going to be called Bottoms Up, right?
Okay, everybody. Well,
It's
thanks
been
so
a
much for
delight,
joining
Deborah.
us tonight. Again, make sure to visit our Facebook page, Supernatural Girls. Give us a like, follow us, and we will be back next week. And until then, We'll see you on the Blue Highway. Good night, everybody.
Good night.